The grand palace of Verathis floated above the cloud layer of Solis Prime like a jewel suspended in amber light. Its spires caught the twin suns and scattered them into prismatic waterfalls across the courtyard below. It was, by every standard of the Galactic Accord, the most secure structure in 7 star systems. And yet, the assassins still got in. Princess Lyra Vera stood before the tall mirror in her private chambers, her bioluminescent silver skin glowing faintly in the low evening light. Her forearms moved with practiced elegance, adjusting the ceremonial sash across her chest. In 3 hours, she would appear before the High Council to sign the Unity Compact, a treaty that would end 40 years of quiet war between the Varan Crown and the Durathi Federation. 40 years. Thousands dead. And tonight, one signature would end it all. "You have a wrinkle," said a voice behind her. Lyra glanced into the mirror. Her human maid, Mara Ellison, was already crossing the room with a small iron tool, expression flat and focused, as if wrinkles were personal enemies she intended to destroy. "I have 12 elite palace guards outside that door," Lyra said, "and you concern yourself with fabric. Your guards can't fix a wrinkle." Mara pressed the iron smoothly along the sash's edge, one hand steadying the fabric with the kind of efficient certainty that the princess had come to associate exclusively with humans. "Also, Commander Dale has the wrong formation again. He keeps bunching them near the east corridor." Lyra's violet eyes narrowed. "You noticed that from in here?" "I noticed that from the supply run this morning. He does it every evening shift. Leaves the servant passage behind the tapestry room unmonitored for 11 minutes. Mara stepped back, examined her work, then stepped forward again for one final pass. "There. That's better." Lyra said nothing for a moment. Mara had been assigned to her by the diplomatic exchange program 8 months ago, a gesture of goodwill from Earth's embassy. The humans called it a cultural bridge. Most of the palace staff had called it an insult, quietly, in hallways they thought she couldn't hear. A human. A maid. As if the princess of Verathis required a creature from a barely spacefaring backwater to dress her. Lyra had not agreed with them, even then. There was something about Mara Ellison that felt like a river running quietly beneath deep ice, still on the surface, powerful underneath, and absolutely indifferent to what anyone thought of it. "Tell Commander Dale about the formation," Lyra said. "Already did. 3 times. Mara set the iron aside. "He thanked me politely and didn't change anything." The attack came at the 9th hour bell. Lyra was at her writing desk reviewing the compact's final language when the lights cut out. Not a flicker, a clean, surgical severance. Emergency bio lights along the floor activated immediately, casting the room in dim red. Then came the sound. A soft thump from the corridor. Then another. Then silence. Mara was already moving. Lyra had not even risen from her chair when the human crossed the room in 4 steps, put herself between the princess and the main door, and pressed her back against the wall beside it. "Stay low," Mara said quietly. Her voice had changed. The soft, slightly dry tone she used for daily conversation was gone. What replaced it was something calibrated. Deliberate. "The guards," Lyra began, "are down." Mara's eyes moved to the tapestry across the room. The one covering the servants' passage. "I counted 4 distinct pressure sounds from 2 different directions. At least 2 entry points. They'll come through the main door first as distraction." Lyra stared at her. "How do you know?" "Because that's what I would do." Before Lyra could process that, the main door burst open. 2 figures came through fast, gray-cloaked, faces masked, moving with the fluid precision of professional killers. They were Durathi, Lyra recognized, from the way they moved. Federation trained. The ones who fought like water, always finding the lowest, easiest path to their target. They did not account for the maid. Mara moved the moment the door opened. Not toward them, sideways, out of their expected sightline, using the doorframe's shadow. The first figure raised a pulse blade. She caught the wrist with both hands, stepped inside the arc of the swing, and redirected the momentum hard into the second attacker. The collision was brutal and efficient. 2 bodies hit the floor in less than 3 seconds. She disarmed the first one before he could recover. Lyra watched her do it with something that felt, embarrassingly, like awe. But there were more. The tapestry across the room exploded inward. 2 more figures, and these ones were larger, heavier armored. They had clearly expected a clear path to the princess. They had not expected a human standing in the middle of the room holding a confiscated pulse blade and looking at them the way a stone wall looks at weather. "Your Highness," Mara said without turning, "please move to the alcove behind the bookshelf." Lyra moved. She was not ashamed of it. She had never been trained for combat, that was what guards were for. But right now her guard was a 5'6" human woman from a planet that had only discovered faster than light travel 60 years ago, and Lyra trusted her more than she had trusted anyone in the palace. She pressed herself into the alcove and watched. Mara did not fight like the palace guards. The guards of Verathis were trained in the classical form, structured, honorable, designed for duels and ceremony as much as actual war. It was elegant. It was effective against known threats in known configurations. It was absolutely useless against what Mara did. She moved wrong. That was the only way Lyra could describe it later, to the council, to the investigators, to anyone who asked. The human moved wrong, too low, too close, changing angles constantly, never where an opponent's muscle memory expected her to be. She used the furniture. She used the walls. At one point she used one attacker's own momentum to throw him directly into the other, and then she was on them both before they untangled themselves. It was over in under 2 minutes. 4 attackers. The same number that had silently neutralized 12 elite palace guards in the corridor outside. Mara stood in the center of the room, breathing harder than she had been before, a small cut across her forearm from a blade that had gotten closer than it should have. She looked at the bodies, unconscious, not dead, she had been very precise about that, and then she looked at Lyra. "Are you hurt?" she asked. The calm professional voice was back, as if she had simply pressed the iron over a particularly stubborn wrinkle. Lyra stepped out of the alcove. Her legs were steady. She was proud of that. "No," the princess said. "Then, Mara. What are you?" The human blinked. "Your maid, Your Highness." Before that. A pause. Mara set the pulse blade down on the writing desk, carefully, well away from the treaty papers. "Military family," she said finally. 12 years in Earth's Special Operations Division before the exchange program. They recruited Maid candidates with certain additional competencies. In case diplomatic assignments became complicated. She glanced toward the door. "We should secure the corridor and contact the palace medical unit. Commander Dale's guards will need attention." Lyra looked at her for a long moment. 8 months. 8 months of Mara pressing her clothes and noting her schedule and correcting the palace kitchen's interpretation of human dietary needs and saying absolutely nothing about any of this. "You knew," Lyra said slowly. "About the servant passage. About the formation gap. You knew this was going to happen." Mara's expression remained neutral, but something shifted behind her eyes. "I suspected the risk was elevated, given the timing of the treaty. I didn't know the specific night. But you stayed close." "Yes, Your Highness." "Instead of telling me. Or the commander." "I told the commander 3 times, Mara said. "And you, with respect, would have increased your security profile and likely altered tonight's schedule. Which would have delayed the signing. A beat. The treaty matters. You said so yourself. 40 years. Thousands dead." Lyra was quiet. Outside, she could hear the distant sounds of the palace coming back to life, alarms activating, booths in hallways, the deep resonant bell of the emergency protocol. Help was coming. It was, at this point, completely unnecessary. "Mara," the princess said. "Your Highness. After tonight, after the signing, I intend to propose a formal review of the diplomatic exchange program's staffing criteria." Lyra straightened her sash, the one Mara had ironed. "And I intend to propose that your title be changed." Mara tilted her head slightly. "To what?" Lyra almost smiled. "Something more accurate." The Unity Compact was signed at midnight, 3 hours behind schedule. The official record cited a security complication, swiftly resolved. It did not mention the human Maid. It did not need to. Everyone who mattered already knew.